Oh my God. Okay. I'm just going to warn you guys and let you know ahead of time there's going to be a lot of F-bombs in this review because it's the only adjective that fits this movie. I just saw the best documentary this year at the festival. I'm sure I've got one to go, but I think I can safely say that there is going to be no competition for this one. It was super duper Alice Cooper. Fucking incredible movie. It was one of the best rock documentaries that I've ever seen. They actually built it a doc opera, which I enjoyed. I like that term. Anyway, let me get the formalities out of the way first. The directors of this incredible film are Reg Harkema, Scott McFadyen, and Sam Dunn. And these guys are the same guys who did the Rush movie, Rush documentary, which of course I flipped out for when it came out a few years ago. I believe that was called All the World's a Stage, or after their live album, All the World's... I can't remember the exact title. But anyway, they did a fantastic documentary about Rush, which of course I freaked out over because they are one of my favorite bands of all time. But this was even better. And I'm saying this as a Rush fan, so that's saying a lot, okay? Now, I'm also an Alice Cooper fan. I was a huge Alice Cooper fan back in the 70s. I remember him when I was growing up. I must have been maybe about 10 years old when I was first exposed to his music, because I have two older brothers, and they had plenty of Alice Cooper albums lying around. I remember Killer, remember that? Love It to Death. I think that is probably my favorite Alice Cooper album. That one and Killer, probably those two. And Billion Dollar Babies. Yeah, I mean... just incredible. Alice Cooper. Alice. Love you, Alice. Okay, so, one thing I have to say about this documentary is, of course, it's great because of the subject matter, Alice Cooper. But also, it was just a really brilliant portrait of this guy as an artist, and how he became Alice Cooper, and his background and everything, and how that played a part in his... evolution, if you will. I just lost my train of thought. Okay, see, I'm doing this review on a break between movies because I've got about 3 hours between movies, and so we came home, so I just decided to do this now while it's all fresh in my mind and all fresh and glistening and beautiful and everything. Another thing I want to say about this documentary that was so great is it's not your typical documentary where you see people being interviewed and they're just sitting in a chair and you get, you know, you're facing them head on and they're talking. There was none of that in this movie, and I thought it was a brilliant decision to do that. Instead, they used a lot of like archival footage, a lot of pictures, a lot of montages, like kind of 3D animation and stuff like that, and it really worked. I mean, the movie just sped along from beginning to end, not a dull moment. It was just fabulous, and so much great archival footage, just like in the Rush movie. They found all those great pictures and old footage and everything. Oh my God. Okay. So, for those of you who don't know, I don't know how you cannot know. How can you not know Alice Cooper? But anyways, I guess for those of you who are too young, perhaps you missed out. Because this guy was really one of the greatest rock stars of all time. He was the biggest rock star in the world at one time. Anyway, he was born into a very religious family. His dad was a pastor. And he grew up in the 50s in Detroit, was born in Detroit. And he was churchgoer, you know, good little Christian boy, you know, lived by the Bible, lived by the book and everything. Very much a very obedient, dutiful, church-going kind of son. But this guy was a born artist. And he also had really bad asthma. So his doctor told his parents that they needed to get him to a warmer climate. So they moved to Phoenix when he was, I guess he was in his teen years. And that's where he met his bandmate, Dennis Dunaway, who was the bass player for Alice Cooper. And they were both into art, very much into art. He said he was always drawing all the time, and so they were in art class, and they talked about all the artists that they loved, like Georges Braque and Magritte, and Dali. Dali came up, and he factors into the story later on. But anyway, these guys were both art lovers, and so they were also music lovers, and this is at the height of Beatlemania. This was like in 1967 or something like that, so they decided to start a band doing, you know, covers of all these other bands' songs. And that's how they got their start. They started performing in this little club called the VIP Club, I believe it was. And they really caught on. But one thing that set them apart from all the other bands that were playing at that time is they had a kind of theatrical aspect to their, an artsy kind of like approach to their performances. This is from the very beginning. It wasn't as outrageous as it later became when he really became Alice. And he talks a lot in the movie about his two personalities. His real name is Vincent Furnier. And he says there was Vince and there's Alice. And Alice was this character the stage character that he created for the band. An interesting story about how they came up with the Alice Cooper name. When these guys first formed their band, they were known as the Earwigs, and then they changed their name to the Spiders. And they became Alice Cooper because one night they were playing with a Ouija board, and one of the band members asked, who was I, did I have a past life? And it answered yes, and what was my name? And some really weird name came out. And so then Alice tried it. Vince at the time tried it, asked the same questions. Did I have any past lives? It said yes. What was my name? And the Ouija board spelled out Alice Cooper. So that's how they got their name. And of course, then they became legends. After that, they moved to, when they started to get a really big following in Phoenix, they moved to LA, because I guess that's where everybody was going if you wanted to become famous, really wanted to get in the music business at that time. That's where everybody was. And it was like 67, so it was the height of like, hippiedom and all that stuff, Woodstock and all that stuff. And so they ended up getting involved with the GTOs, who were this girl group who lived in Frank Zappa's basement. You may know Pamela Des Barres. She was a member of the GTOs. They were kind of all these groupies that formed this little group, this Frank Zappa affiliated group. And so for some reason, they got involved with them and they started hanging out with them. And that's how they came up with their look, like all this sort of glitzy, sparkly, androgynous kind of look, because they took them to all these thrift shops in LA and, found them all these kind of sequin, costumes and shit like that to wear on stage. So that's how they got their look. But then they started getting into the real theatrics. And when they played their first big gig in LA, where they, kind of did all this stuff, it did not go over well at all. And they really, really had a major setback. So they left LA. And I think they went to, did they go back to Detroit? I think they said they went back to Detroit. Or they were on the road just kind of living out of suitcases for a while, performing where they could. But then they went back to Detroit and played this big festival. And that's where it exploded. That's where their music was really received well and all that stuff. And that's where they started getting into the really weird stuff, like Alice would, they're wearing all the makeup and stuff, and Alice would get, I think, no, it was in Toronto. They played a major festival in Toronto, the Chicken Story. Okay. When they were performing, Alice brought out these pillows, feather pillows, and started, I guess, throwing them around and stuff, and all these feathers are flying around. For some reason, there was a chicken backstage. He decided to throw this chicken into the audience, which got torn apart. Poor chicken. But that is what, and then they threw it back up on stage at him, and it was all bloody and in pieces and stuff like that. So that's this big news story broke, like these guys are freaks, they're killing chickens on stage and everything. So that's where they really, really got their notoriety, was from that gig here in Toronto. And so they just continued along these lines. Some of you who were lucky enough to see him in the 70s, God, I wish I would have seen him. I was too young. But my God, those must have been incredible shows where he would be executed on stage. They hung him on stage. There was a guillotine. He was, fake beheaded on stage. All this really, really weird, dark, scary, creepy stuff. And he was just huge. It just became huger and huger and huger. And then he started to become, as the front man of Alice Cooper, he began to really kind of, I guess, let it go to his ego, and him and his bandmates got into, I guess they kind of, the bandmates took a back seat to him, and I guess there was probably some squabbling going on, and he was really eating it up, and he became, when he first started performing with the band, he shied away from all alcohol and drugs, but that didn't last too long. He started getting into the drinking, and he became a severe alcoholic. So anyway, he's drinking like crazy when they're at the height of their fame and all that stuff. And then eventually the band parted and went their separate ways. And at this point, I think he put out his solo album, Welcome to My Nightmare, and it was after that that he just really, really, really got, like, really bad into the alcoholism, and so he ended up going to a mental hospital and drying out. And when he came out, when he was sober, he teamed up with Bernie Taupin, who is, I guess, Elton John's lyric writer. Yeah, there were a lot of great, like, a lot of great commentary from people in music, like Bernie Taupin, Elton John, Dee Snider. That was funny. The guy from Twisted Sister, I'll never forget one of the quotes he said. It was like, when Alice ejaculated, he spawned a whole new, oh God, I wish I could remember that quote. It doesn't sound right coming from me. So when he ejaculated, he spawned a whole new realm of glam metal or something like that. So all these other bands like Motley Crue and Wasp and all these, they were all influenced by him, right? But anyway, that was hilarious, the way he said it. But yeah, so he sobered up, got out of the mental hospital, and then he's teamed up with Bernie Taupin to do this other project, and that's when he started getting into cocaine, and that's when he really, really, like, he went from one addiction to another, and he got even more severely into the cocaine than he did the alcohol. He was really, and they were showing footage of him where he looked like absolutely anorexic. Like, I mean, the guy was a twig, you know. I mean, that's all he was doing all day was just freebasing and shit like that. So he was really, really, really heavily into the coke. And eventually his wife left him, and he decided, listen, I'm either going to die or I'm going to live. And so he got off the drugs, and now, supposedly he is 100% sober and clean and sober. And, after that happened, which was in the 80s, I think it was in 86, he came back, he did a Halloween, MTV broadcast his comeback concert on TV. And yeah. So, I don't think he's done that much lately. I haven't heard much from him lately. But I guess back in the 80s, he made a comeback. And, I guess it didn't last too long because he kind of faded out of the limelight there. I haven't heard too much from him. But anyway, I mean, the man's a legend. The man is a legend. He influenced so many people. Me included. I mean, influenced not musically, but I mean, just loving his music. I really, really love those early albums. Like I said, Love It to Death. God, I love that album. Killer. And those songs were so creepy. You know, like if you're an Alice fan, do you remember that song Killer, where they actually, at the end of the song, it's like this electric chair and everything. And there was another one. The Ballad of Dwight Fry, which was on Love It to Death, which is about a guy going insane. I was on, like, these songs just totally creep me out. You know, the music and the lyrics are so great, but they're creepy. They're really, really scary. And that's part of his appeal, right? It's that darkness, right? And he said he was able to channel his dark side into this Alice Cooper character. Like, he completely compartmentalized the two. There was the good Vince, the guy who came from the Christian family, who was a churchgoer, and who really, really, had his beliefs. I think he's a believer. He believes in God and all that, and values religion and has morals and all that stuff. But when he got into rock music and became so successful, I mean, who wouldn't be tempted away from that and just live this totally excessive life, which he did for many years. And I mean, who, you know, I don't know, too many people who could resist all the trappings of fame and fortune like that, which are, you know, drugs and alcohol and women and all that stuff for guys. You know, and, yeah, so it was just, God, this was such a good documentary. This is one of the best rock documentaries I've ever seen. And the directors came out, they did a Q&A afterwards. Alice was not there. Like I said, he was in town for the premiere, which was earlier in the week, but he, was not here today, which I'm glad about, believe it or not, because my camera is fucked. I dropped my camera on the ground the other day on the concrete, and now it's not working. So when I was leaving this morning, I'm like, God damn, he better not be there, because I would be so pissed if he were there and I didn't get him on the Q&A or a Q&A. So I couldn't film today. It was an awesome Q&A. It was so funny. It was so great. These guys are awesome. They really, really know how to make rock documentaries. These guys are great. And they were saying that, they're working on a documentary now about Soundgarden. Oh my God, that is going to be incredible. And also, get this, they're going to be doing one about Black Sabbath. Oh my fucking God. Okay. So I cannot wait for that as well. I mean, Sabbath, you know, Alice Cooper, Pink Floyd, Zeppelin. Yes, all those fucking great bands from the 70s, you know. Oh my Lord. So I'm probably forgetting a lot of stuff that I want to say, because there was so much, so many stories, so many great clips, you know, so much great information in here about music at that time in the 70s, and it was just in late 60s, early 70s, and it was just a joy to watch and a joy to experience, and you're sitting there like, you know, getting into all the music, just bopping along. I know I was. And, yeah, school's out. Oh my God. And Hello Hooray. And I'm 18. Oh my God, that song. And just so many great fucking songs this guy had. So, I loved it. It was incredible. Of course I'm recommending it. You know I'm going to recommend it. Like, how can I not recommend this to you? You knew it was going to happen, right? And it's going to come out because it was, E1 is one of the companies involved, the Movie Channel, Movie Network, so you're going to see this for sure in the theaters or on cable, whatever. Watch it. If you're a rock music fan, especially of that era, watch it. And if you're not of that era, if you're younger, watch it and get an education and see where your influences came from. Because this guy was an absolute legend. You know, this guy changed music history. He was a part of music history, very important part of music history, and I just loved it. I loved it. This movie gets a million thumbs up from me, okay? So, I'm seeing one more movie today called Fed Up, seeing it this afternoon, so I'll be back with that review. I'm going to try to see if I can find some footage, some free footage here somewhere so I can attach it to this video. But if not, I'll put the trailer in the information bar below. At least watch the trailer. It was just, this movie was fucking insanely good. Insanely good. Okay. So, I'll see you guys later. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Rock on, people. Rock on.